Alright, hello everybody. Today is a very special episode of Voice of Silence because today I have my life partner here with me. He is the father of our son and he is my best friend and the love of my life. Now, before we even begin, there's a question that I have for everybody that is listening. What happens when a child suffers silently? And then what happens when the child grows up into being an adult? And then what happens to the relationships, the interpersonal relationships that he or she deals with? Now, when we were discussing this as a couple about what we are going to be talking here, then the one thing that we both agreed upon was that whatever you go through in life, you should not be scared about talking about it, thinking that somebody's going to get hurt or what will XYZ think, whoever is related, because they shouldn't have done that in the first place. So please don't be scared about talking, about speaking up. And which is why I'm so deeply thankful to Adi Chakravarty to come forward, have the courage, display courage to speak about the difficult childhood that he's had, with the hope he finds merit actually in the fact that he's going to be sharing his story and hopes that he'll be able to help two sets of people. One, adults who have had a similar background, and parents who are going through something which might affect their child a little adversely. So with that, let's welcome our fifth speaker, Aditya Chakravarty. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. And before we begin, Adi, is there anything that you would like to begin with as a message to the world?
Okay, I think when you fly, when you're traveling and you fly on a plane, the air hostess just before the flight they would say that first when there's danger, first secure yourself before you go and help others. And I think I would like to draw a parallel to that by saying that I think it's very important to delve really, 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 really deep within yourself and speak the truth to yourself and listen to your truth, and secure yourself first before you go out and try to do everything for the world. I think that is pretty much my message, and I'm sure we'll circle back to it in
yeah, we will.
space, so.
Thank you for that. So he's saying that one should secure oneself, you mean in terms of happiness, right?
In terms of happiness, yes.
So what he says is that we should secure ourselves first in terms of happiness and then deal with the world. So we will come back to it towards the end and see if you have anything else to add to it. But let's begin first with a little bit of background. Adi, if you would like to share with everybody about your parents. Who are they as people?
Okay, so you of course know enough. A lot of people over here will know that typical defense background. My dad was in the Navy, and typically in the forge. Whoever can relate to over here, it's a tough life, but at the same time, it's a very, very secure life. You have people in the same colony with similar backgrounds and things like that. So you know everybody. It's a small world. You party a lot, you enjoy yourself a lot as well, and it's close-knit. Mom was someone who's known to be very, very good-looking, tall, traditionally, good-looking person. So, when it comes to family, I think they have given me a lot of freedom. They have given me the freedom to choose my career, my, whatever talent I wanted to pursue. They never pushed success down my throat, and they never pushed, academics down my throat. I think I was lucky enough to be a natural sports person, so, they were always open to, doing that. Of course, they didn't want me to ignore studies, but they were very happy allowing me to do whatever they wanted to do. So in that sense, I think, especially with that category of, what typically does not necessarily fall very well in families, I think they were pretty amazing there.
Okay.
So, that's the background, of course,
So, okay, to me that sounds like pretty much a very, very like a fairy tale sort of background or a set of parents or childhood. So, where did the difficulty begin?
I think the difficulty began between themselves, because of themselves, and typically in arranged marriages, what happens is, especially in those days, I don't know if it's the same now, but those days you look at society and what society wants for you. So you're looking at a very good-looking lady, and hence, obviously in the society she's accepted as somebody who's really beautiful, and you're looking at a defense officer. And again, the society would say that, extremely secure job, you know that the government's going to look after you, you will move, to different places and, get more exposure. So, arranged marriages typically are society driven. And I think what effectively happens is, you're only looking at how these two people will gel well together, but you're not necessarily giving them the space to understand themselves very well or each other very well. So what effectively happened was they failed in the whole process of being compatible, right? When you're adjusting 70% in a relationship, that's no relationship. I can understand when you're adjusting 5 to 10% in a relationship, that's good. You at least for a fact that you'll be happy in your space with that person. But when nothing matches as human beings and as two people living under the same roof, then it's always going to be a very unhappy marriage. That's what went wrong. And on top of that, if you have very high ego and you have you're always trying to think about your reputation in the society, and you're always thinking about your own status, then that's icing on the cake of what can go wrong.
But tell me something, Adi. This is whatever words you've spoken just now are obviously the result of a mature mind, an adult mind, somebody that you became, and then in hindsight figured this out about them. But when you say that you're speaking about a difficult childhood, so let's say talk to the audience about maybe a few experiences that you had when you were a child. Like right now you're speaking as an adult. In hindsight, I'm sure. I mean, when a child is 4 or 5, they don't know what arranged marriages or egos or reputation is, right? So, would you like to, and at your own comfort, maybe share a few experiences which made you, as a child, uncomfortable?
Yes, I think, before I agreed to do this, I've been playing this in my head at least 1 million times for the last month and a half, whether I should do this or not. And, it's very likely that my parents will be watching this, maybe not right away, but soon. It's not like that, like I've announced that this is what I'm going to say and all of that, but they will eventually watch it. But, I think, and also, this, a lot of my friends were also asking, do you want to really go public with all of this? Is this something that you want to talk about in public? Because this is something that is very personal to you. Will they not feel bad? I genuinely feel that I will talk about my trauma experiences, but I want to also say that I'm doing this only because I feel that, there's a way to manage your unhappy marriage always. There's always a solution to ensure that your child stays happy irrespective of how, what you decide with your marriage, right? There's a way of keeping your home happy, whether it's broken or not. Unfortunately, I don't think my family chose that. We chose to remain unhappy. And in the bargain, what has happened is that I think throughout my life, I've only seen that. I won't say that, there've been, as I said, there've been some amazing times, obviously. I mean, everyone has amazing times, but, when it's overshadowed by the not so amazing times mostly, it's traumatic, obviously, right? It's not something that you're happy talking about. I'm not happy talking about it, but I know if it can help a few people going forward, if you're in troubled marriages today, what your child is going through right now, I could probably tell you what he or she is going through when you're at each other's throats in the house. I can also tell you maybe what he or she may become eventually when they become an adult, and what that person is going through when trauma happens again in the house in his or her own family. These are experiences that I've felt, and
can you maybe speak about
I'll give you some examples, and for my friends, don't get me wrong, I know you're there to get my back, but I need to do this. I've been slapped in public, yes. There have been massive arguments and fights in out in the public, in parties and things like that, where and when you're talking about society and reputation, I don't know what happens to reputation there when the entire naval force is literally watching. I've seen in the middle of the road, getting out of the car and seeing them fight in the middle of traffic. I've also seen cops coming home. That has happened too. A lot of this has happened in front of family and friends. So I don't. Of course, a lot of this has happened in front of people. You can imagine the number of things that have happened behind closed doors. So.
And you were witness to all of that?
I mean, at least till the time I left home.
And if I may ask, which is your earliest memory? Like since when do you remember all this happening? Was it at a later stage? Was it always? If you can tell us ages, because that is what we are addressing.
Yeah, my earliest memory would be when I was 4 years old. I remember things being thrown around the house, things breaking, literally smashing objects in front of me, and I didn't understand aggression till then.
What used to happen to you that time? What were if you can try and remember, what goes through a child?
I think the biggest fear, and I'm also, just to give you the background of, I'm an only child. I don't have any siblings. So, so in this scenario, it gets a little more lonely. You don't know what to do. You don't know who to call. You're too young. You can't just run out of the house and call the neighbors because you don't want to. And also because I'm too young to understand, I'm just seeing it. And it's visual in front of me. It's not like they're doing it in their own room and I'm outside and I can hear noises, but I can see it right in front of me. I mean, literally where Yoshita is sitting, and it's just this much distance. And I remember the maid trying to shield me from it, and take me to the kitchen and all of that, but then it was all over the house. You can't avoid it. I mean, what are you hiding it? Why are you hiding it from me? I can see everything, so there's really no point. The feeling that I've got, and it's not only then, of course, that time I was just scared because it was the first time I saw it and I just saw aggression. I'm typically not an aggressive person, but I have, through the years, whenever I did see this, I think the biggest fear, maybe because it's an only child problem, the biggest fear is separation.
For the child?
For the child, for me, and also to see my parents separate. My biggest fear was that because they would always talk about divorce, or they would always talk about separation, they would always talk about running, getting out of the house, and they would also, in frustration, they would bang the door, take the car, go for a drive, sometimes not come back the night or whatever. And I was always left wondering, where that person is, or will they come back? So there were many nights where I would, one parent would shut the door and stay in darkness. The whole house is in darkness. And I'm actually waiting. There's no dinner, there's no food, and even the person is not eating. And the person who's gone out, I have no idea where that was. And we didn't have mobile phones then, so there was no way of understanding what's going on. And
this is during the ages of?
This is throughout. I think this was right from 4 to 24. Literally, right? So, it probably still happens, I don't know, but another traumatic memory that I have is there are so many times I would come back from school in the afternoon and I would see the house dark. One parent in one room, the other parent in the other room, and you just know. Sometimes when I'm walking from the bus stop to the home, I would actually get that feeling that something's not right today. And my intuition became so strong and correct afterwards that every time I would walk into the house, I would know that there's something wrong. Sometimes I would see things thrown around and, a chair fallen or, a plate broken in the kitchen and things like that, and someone's thrown the food down on.
Did you ever speak to them about this growing up? I'm sure as a 4-year-old it is tough, but let's say when you came into your teens, then did you at least try or take help? Did they take any? Did they seek any psychological help, like from a therapist? Did they go for counseling? Did they speak to family and friends? Did you involve anybody to make things better? Was there any effort to make things better for you or for themselves?
I won't say there was any effort. I think the effort was to stay together somehow. I don't know if that really worked.
And why was that? You said that they did try to split or part ways.
They must have split 20 times
again,
and come back.
So it was society driven again, that we can't get a divorce?
I don't know. It could be a combination of society. It could be a combination of whether I'm capable of going out and doing things for myself and my child. Fear. It could be, security, insecurity. I don't know what it would.
But at a lot of times, Adi, while we were discussing this, you mentioned that even you used to push them to stay together.
Yes.
This is a point to be noted here, which we will come to later, that how children will always push for the parents to live together, but there's a big but which he will answer later, but just like holding on to that thought. So you also
yes,
pushed
I did.
them. You did.
I did, because
which is natural. I mean,
it's natural because you're fearing
child-
separation. You're always afraid of separation, and you don't want to be left alone. You don't want to be seeing one parent crying throughout. You don't like that. I mean, obviously, you don't want to see that. And as I said, there were some amazing times. Although
please
you
do
can count
talk
on your
about
fingers.
you can talk about the pause. I'm sure there must have been some.
Yeah, they were amazing
awesome
times. They were fantastic together when they were at parties sometimes, and we would go on holidays and we would have a fantastic time. But some of those holidays would also turn sour. So it's either this or that. So I was always looking for this. Saying that it needs to be a good time that we all experience together. But a lot of times it's turned south, and those are the experiences and memories I also do carry, unfortunately. But when they've had a good time, or when they are having a good time, they were also phenomenal. So I think it was also a situation of, I keep saying this, there's a song by U2, With or Without You. I genuinely feel that they can't live with or without each other. It's that kind of a situation. And
that is true for us. So I think that's true for most couples, but that was just a joke.
So
I think
becomes a habit.
That is something even we relate with.
Yeah, it becomes a habit.
Yeah,
but
it does.
Going back to pushing them to stay together, of course. I mean, who wants to have a separated family? But I've always of course, while during my growing up years, I realized that maybe in hindsight, did they do this for me?
Have you asked them?
No, I've never asked them. I fear having these conversations with them. But
have you ever had any conversation with either parent or both parents together? Why? Or maybe opened up as a child with the parents, or confronted them, or have they come to you and explained themselves meaning their behavior? Has there been any sort of resolution to the whole thing?
No, there's no explanation of behavior. And I think in a family, when you take each other for granted, a lot of times you don't talk about these things much. You just, you give a sort of a, this expression that देखो क्या हो रहा है family में, तुमको तो दिख ही रहा है, see what she's doing or see what he's doing and things like that. So nobody's really talking about why this has happened, or nobody's kind of going deep into the problem and trying to figure out the crux of it all. It's all shallow and at the same time surface, because when you go down to the problem, they would have the biggest fights for the most ridiculous reasons.
Yeah, which I think
some of the bigger reasons they would actually work together and solve, which were probably larger decision-making problems. But typically you are fighting horrible fights and ugly fights for the most ridiculous reasons. So what explanation can you even give for something like that? It is just pure, either ego or one-upmanship or whatever. But
so
I've had discussions. Answering your question, of course I've had discussions, and I think the older I got, I think 20s onwards, I started to realize that there are families who don't fight. I always thought this was normal.
Normal.
I did not even realize that it's not, because, unfortunately in the Forge, you get to hear stories very easily. And
It's a very small community.
it's a small community, and you get to hear these stories only. So I always thought it's common, and whenever I would speak to friends also once in a while, and yes, they fight. Of course, a lot of times I would stay away from talking about these things with friends. But some of my closest friends, whenever I would discuss with them, they would also say that हमारे में भी होता है, my mom is like this, my dad is like that, and all that. So I was like, ठीक है, सभी में होता होगा. It's only when I got married I realized that you also have peaceful parents and peaceful families. So I think realized a lot, beyond 25, and eventually I think after I got married, where I think I was a little
This I
unlucky
remember.
there.
This is just a little thing that happened when we got married. That for the longest time, I would say almost close to a year, Adi would ask me. He would think that we are all pretending to not be, and I would be
Yeah.
like, we are not putting up a farce. Like my parents are also chick all the time, but and they would say things to me, but it's very different from what maybe Adi came from. So I remember him at one point saying, this is not real. I was like, और क्या real? And then he saw our relatives, everybody, extended family. So I said, everybody won't be putting up an act for you, Adi. This is normal. And I was also getting introduced to his side.
And
of
you were
things.
also wondering why
I was
saying
wondering,
this
it's
when
not
you actually
done.
saw it yourself.
Then of course I've also been witness to the clashes between the parents. So that's when I understood that, or not, I still don't understand. You can't go into somebody's childhood and even try to understand what the child may have gone through. And from that point, I want to ask you, what is the impact that it's had on you? So one of the things that I think I only figured and discovered through our relationship was that maybe you got into the parent mode from the age of 4 or 5. Is that true? Is that true, number
From
one?
the age of maybe I think 20.
20?
Yeah. Before
Before
that,
that you were not like,
I was I think in a zone which didn't know any better.
okay. So, and if you were to just mention some emotions, what was the impact of all of this on you as an individual? Then later on, as you grew up, on your relationships with maybe even romantic relationships that you've had, then in marriage, as a father, if you could just take us through that journey, what happens to a child coming from that background?
Okay, so I think the negatives that definitely affect that I went through were, one is very low self-confidence. I think a lot of times when something used to go drastically wrong in the house, sometimes it also was because of me, right? And not something that I would have done. But let's say one party is saying something to me and the other party is defending me, उसी में शुरू हो जाता था. So I used to feel very, very guilty. So whenever I would do something wrong, even at work or even at social settings, if I made a tiny sort of a mistake and I realized it, it would immediately crash my self-confidence, and it would take a little while to recover. For me, I hate confrontations today. I mean, I just can't stand it. If I see two people fighting or screaming, I think I'm allergic to screams. A lot of times, excuse me, during my childhood, I would wake up with screams. I would wake up because of them, because of something breaking or something, suddenly someone screeching in the house. I would wake up because of that, and there've been I've actually had many sleepless nights because of that, and I would wake up with a start, suddenly thinking that someone screaming is actually in my head. Today, a lot of times, like you've seen this, I think in a hotel recently, there was somebody who screamed on the other side of
Anurag.
the different
Anurag.
room, and I woke up with a start, and you also did, but I think I kind of handled it pretty well. I realized that I've kind of grown. But screams, I'm allergic to screams. Something happens to me, and I think
And I
freeze.
can also second that, because now imagine a wife. This is just a little input from my side. So I'm being normal. Like sometimes we all scream, right? Like I don't scream like the way he's probably used to. I just raise my voice the way I do with my child. Sometimes that, "Ye kya kiya? Ekdam pada hua hai," whatever. I would scream, and sometimes when it's to him or at him, his reaction would be very different, and he would just, even if it's fault or it's his responsibility, he would just become a different person, and that scares me. So which is why now what has happened is that I have started to channelize my chotu, it's not even anger, it's irritation, but because I've seen that reaction in him, and now thankfully I know where it's coming from. उससे पहले तो मुझे समझ ही नहीं आता था. I was like, I've told you so many times that Adi, I don't have the luxury to raise my voice. Now that has been stifled. Now we know the origin of it. Now we know the history of it, where it's coming from. So today, can you believe this? I actually take permission. I tell him, I'm getting angry. Let me scream. Then he says, okay. So that thankfully, but we communicate a lot. But this is the impact that happens.
Yeah, that's all thanks to you. I mean, because you were talking about things that affect me, I wouldn't initiate this, the communication, saying that, okay, fine, you can scream.
Yeah.
You actually taught me that, okay, fine, you get affected by it. I'm going to now announce that I'm going to scream, and you do.
It's hilarious, then I start laughing.
So, some of these things affect, obviously these are the negative effects of, what has happened, because a lot of times I don't even know. I'll give you another example. I've never seen my parents hug. I've never seen my parents in a romantic dinner. A lot of children don't, but what I'm trying to say is that, I haven't really seen them enjoy each other's company the way two people in love would. So even romance, and maybe you can validate this because I know that it's been validated in the past for me as well, but it doesn't come naturally to me. I'm good, yes, in some cases, but a lot of times I don't know whether this is right or wrong because I've not really seen anything beyond a certain line, right? The other thing I wanted to say is that I think I've become somebody who has very little aggression.
Yes.
I think unless it brings out something in me from the past, maybe I get aggressive, but it's always little or no aggression.
Yeah,
right?
that is it.
And lastly, I have distance from my parents a lot. These are the negative effects, and I also want to talk about some positive effects, and this is important because I think I know what not to do in a family, and this is the biggest learning because especially with a child or with your wife, with people in general, at work situations, I know what not to do, and it only takes this much of effort to cool yourself down and not get angry and blow things out of proportion. That is number one. Second thing is I'm very, very calm, as I think a lot of people here know me, so I'm sure you'll validate that. I'm completely opposite of them, as what they are.
Was that a deliberate call, or you just became opposite, completely
Well,
opposite?
not what to do was a deliberate call, of course. I think calmness and patience. One more thing that I've really adapted very well to is I can handle trauma and public humiliation very easily because I've been through it enough.
Can you explain a little more?
I think
What do you
because
mean by
a
public?
lot of these things have been in public, and I've been part of it. I've been sometimes at the receiving end of it. So if somebody is criticizing me publicly, or let's say I go through a public humiliation of some kind, I know for a fact that I can take it in my stride.
I don't know how to react to this. Honestly, I
Yeah.
don't know whether it's a. Is it? I really don't know. Like, I'm at a loss of whether it's a good quality.
I don't know.
I don't know, but I'm guessing it's helping in some way.
It helps. It helps
Yeah,
immensely,
because,
and I think it doesn't affect you. And I think you go back to what you should focus on, and because at the end of the day, if you know truthfully to yourself that you're fine and you've not done anything wrong, then it doesn't matter if somebody's publicly humiliated. That's their problem. not mine.
So before we move into the next section, is there anything else that you would like to
Oh
share?
yeah, lastly, I'm not dependent on anyone anymore.
Yeah.
That works.
And How about emotionally?
Emotionally, of course. I mean, I think you've been a massive. I mean, you've changed me. Because of your emotional support, and the cushioning that I've got is dramatically opposite to what I used to have. So, yes, I have that much more space to breathe, and I'm normal, and I can, I am myself with you, and that itself is huge. But what I'm trying to say is that because I know that, you know, relationships can be very brittle at times, anything can happen, even with you and me, anything can happen anytime. I know for a fact that I can take it in my stride and move forward.
That's what you meant, that you're not dependent. And that is a positive, by the way, that I would like to also bring in as a wife. It's very ironic actually how the dynamics worked here, because I also have a background. I'm from a divorced background. My child, I was a single mother, so he came in then. So it's everything possible mixed together. But the irony of this all is what he just said, that today I'm at a place too where we are in love with each other, but we are not dependent on each other. It's very interesting. Like today, God forbid, anything happens, I know of course there will be grief and all of that, heartbreak, but our lives will not get over, and we've spoken about it also. That tomorrow if we get to a place that we are realizing that we've fallen out of love, then let's do each other a favor and move out and not waste each other's time. We have discussed this, we have discussed a lot of other things also, but they are not relevant right now. And this, I feel, comes from him more than me. He's taught me this. So I'm validating that thing that you're saying, that you are not dependent. So I completely agree. After 8 years of living with you, I can say that with confidence that yes, it's true.
I mean, marriage is a societal definition.
Yes.
Otherwise, at the end of the day, it's just a relationship that has to be nurtured.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you are prioritizing your best 2-3 relationships in your life. And if you can carry those for life, it may change. But till the time you're living it in your present time, if you're giving it your fullest, that's all you need to do. You can't say what's going to happen later.
Yeah.
But marriage है वो मतलब वो society ने बोल दिया तो करना पड़ता है. But actually it's just it's a commitment to each other for relationship, right? And to actually, and ideally it should be to make ourselves feel like ourselves.
Yeah, not like
happy.
Somebody else.
To be happy. At the end of the day, that's what you want.
Yeah.
The purpose of a marriage is that. And if the purpose of the marriage is anything else, then you've got to look into the mirror and ask yourself.
So we move on to the next section now, which is the main reason why we are here today, which is the voice of silence. From your learnings, I see two things coming out, two messages. So let's first look at adults today who have a similar background. See, nobody can have the exact same background, but let's say adults today who are a product of a difficult childhood like this. Could be worse.
Easily.
What would you want to say to them? That's my first question, and you can go on like as much in depth. Then we move to the second category.
Right. So my answer is not a one-fit-all, one-size-fits-all sort of an answer, but I can always say that, whatever has happened in the past is not your fault. I mean, this is the message to an adult today who's gone through a traumatic background in his childhood, his or her childhood. Whatever has happened is not your fault. Even if they blame you for it, it's not your fault. Everyone's responsible for their own doing. And what I've done is today I've kind of detached myself emotionally from them, but I have attached myself to the whole concept of just health. That I know that to my parents, at least, whatever's happened has happened, but can I make it easier for them during their old age? If anything else happens when I'm with them, I walk away. I don't get into it because I think they're adults. They've been adults for, from the time I know them. So, they should be able to manage it themselves. They manage it then, keeping in mind, me or not keeping in mind me, but they manage themselves. So they can manage it now as well. It's only the category of health where I, come in and I kind of, work towards it. So there's a lot of detachment that comes into play.
And does that
especially
bring
when
feelings of guilt? Have
it
you
used
felt-
to,
Yeah.
but I think when things don't improve, no, you give up, right? I mean, at the end of the day, when it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be, and if it's chosen to be with each other, then what guilt? I mean, what have I done? Why should I feel guilty? But I probably would have felt guilty that if I completely abandoned them, I'm not abandoning them. I'm still there, But I'm in my mind, I don't know if they feel that, but in my mind, it is detached, and it's attached only in the category of health right now. And whatever be the reason, if or a drop of a hat, if I do need to go there to help them, for hospitals and doctors and things like that, that doesn't count in the whole past trauma and all of that, and that's still me in the present. But I think that's the message I would like to give adults today: is that it's not your fault. Your present life is your priority. Your present family that you've chosen is your priority. You yourself is priority. Your past is not. And I think there are people here who've taught me that. And I've been to coaches. I've been to psychotherapists and psychiatrists over this. I've never seen my parents do that. So if I can learn, and I know all of them have said the same thing, that your past is not your fault. Your present is your priority. You yourself are priority. Don't blame yourself for it. Don't kill yourself. Why should I feel guilty? Why should I?
I'm asking again from the society point of view, because it's a general situation. The way the world works, and let's say you are in shadi or some party where there are older people. We've experienced this, which is where it's coming from. Beta jo bhi hai par hai to maa baap aapke. So this, again, we might be sounding as very outliers, but that's just who we are. That this whole concept of par hai to maa baap, par unka to karna hi hai, that is, I think, what he's talking about when he says detachment, because he's a product of that, and they didn't think that they are, by they I mean all parents, all the adults that are product of this, so much trauma, and you're laying, there are future generations that come in, aap sabka dheere dheere, because I've also been the recipient of something that happened with his parents from 40 years ago. Imagine that. So today, parents that are fighting or are displaying domestic violence are not even realizing what they are laying ahead for future generations, friends, families. Somewhere, I'm sure you just mentioned that even at work, when you failed, or maybe with small mistakes, so even professionally, we are laying a ground for that. So then if a person decides one day to detach emotionally, this is my request to the society: please don't hold that person guilty. No, happiness is always the highest thing. You cannot have relationships that have messed you up hold you at ransom. Do you agree with this?
Yeah, I have a significantly long ending to the whole message to society. I'll come to that.
That we'll get to, but
Yeah.
so is that what you want to speak to
Yeah, for
adults?
the adults,
That?
yes.
My next question is the parents. Current, could be any age, with whatever aged children. What do you want to tell parents today who are unhappy in their marriages and are witnessing abuse and violence?
Okay, so I think the most important thing is to shield your child from your own insecurities and troubles, because you may have chosen this marriage, your child has not, right? So, I mean, of course, the child is not stupid at all, because he or she knows that there's a fight going on in the house. But it's better to know that there's something wrong, because an argument is an argument, a slightly difficult fight is a difficult fight, but a very, very overtly scenic fight, public fight, is not something that he or she needs to know. Why can't we just control ourselves a little more? Why does it have to get to a place where the whole world has to know? And what are you trying to achieve? Are you trying to get sympathy from the world, saying that you're the only person struggling in this marriage? So, on what basis are you trying to demean your family? On what basis? For what? How is it that with that people are going to come forward and try and help you? It's not going to happen. You're going to help yourself eventually. So, shield your child. If you are not happy in the marriage, my suggestion would be, if you want to try to work it out, and a lot of times, I hear people say that, for the sake of my child, I think I need to be together. But for the sake of your child, you're trying to be unhappy. I can guarantee you that the child is not going to remain happy, right? So, so for the sake of who? Because you are actually, you're forming the platform for the child to live his or her own life unhappily, constantly seeing this throughout. And I can tell you that the last thing they want is separation. But unless and until you take that call, if it's bad enough, of course, if it's not, if you can work it out, then great. Please, by all means, you should always try to work it out. But give yourself a timeline. Don't link money to it. It will flow. If you've chosen something that you've chosen on your own volition, and you are going out there to kind of live your own life in your own your way, then if your child is with you in that particular separation, then I can guarantee you that the child will be a happier person.
However much the child pleads and forces you to stay together.
I think so, because it's not made things better for me. Honestly, even today I feel that that would have been a better decision.
So you're saying either of the parties needs to be strong enough, because considering that the child doesn't know better, it's the parent who knows better.
Yeah, and a lot of times this happens because of arranged marriages. You're always doing this because या तो पैसा बहुत है, या तो घर बहुत है, गाड़ी बहुत है, security बहुत है. So one person is always trying to figure out how am I going to manage without the other person. उसी की वजह से तो होता है. I mean, if you only choose compatibility to get married, none of this would happen. I know it's tough. I mean, sometimes you go wrong, but try, na. I mean, why do you have to, just sign up just for the heck of signing up? Then firstly, you're not making things better for yourself. So how are you going to make things better for your child?
I agree. I completely agree with you. What else would you like to say?
Well, this whole thing about society, when it comes to trouble in the house, we are always trying to shield ourselves from the society, saying that यार लोग क्या कहेंगे, हमारे बारे में क्या बोलेंगे, अगर मैं छोड़ के चली जाऊंगी या छोड़ के चला जाऊंगा तो लोग क्या कहेंगे, and all of that. We are always trying to impress the society, right? But when you actually go down the dumps, in your own personal life, not a single person from the society is going to come and help you. Why are we pleasing the society so much? What are we trying to do? It's like, इतना भाव क्यों देते हैं हम society को कि, लोग क्या कहेंगे? लोग तो वैसे भी बोलने वाले हैं तुम्हारे बारे में. तुम अगर बिल्कुल ही खुश हो, happy हो, they're just waiting for that one small little mistake that you make to talk about you. So why are you trying to make society happy when not a single person from the society is not going to save your ass? I'm sorry to say, but at the end of the day, it's eventually you, your own person. So please start, maybe taking decisions for yourself, which is why going back to the old message that I was giving, the first sentence that I said is that please ask yourself. Go deep enough. If it's still not the truth, keep asking yourself, what is the truth? Am I going to like this? Is it something that I want? If it is something that you want, then nothing is going to stop you from being happy. But if you're doing it for others, you're not going to be happy. That's for sure.
Anything else before we wrap up the session? And how does this finally connect with the original thing? You said it, but the whole flight wala thing and apna khushi.
देखो खुशी, this is me, of course. I mean, we have a lot of intelligent people here who are very high on emotional EQ, emotional quotient. But I think my opinion would be that it's not like you're going to be happy 24/7. But the fact that there is some sadness, it is better to choose your own sadness for yourself and the moments that made you sad in spite of being happy, rather than being forcefully sad because of somebody else. And lastly, when it comes to your parents, you don't have to forcefully love them. If you don't feel it, don't have to give it. But if you want to still, if you're still feeling guilty, then choose what you want to do with them, so that it just sticks to that, like I've chosen health. But end by saying that, choose your own happiness and sadness rather than somebody else giving it to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Adi. I know that this has not been easy on either of us, I'll be honest with you, and specifically Adi, it is not easy for anybody, let's face it. So can we please give a round of applause for him to actually come up and share. I don't think, I don't have that kind of strength, not that I come from us, but for anything else also, I don't have that kind of strength. So thank you, Adi, and really, really thank you so much. I hope, really wish and pray that somewhere that this little release helps you also. That's what I wish and pray. And more than that, what I wish and pray is that people who are watching, please, I hope that you've taken something away from the courage that has been displayed here and the story that has been shared. And with that, we wrap up. And do always look after your happiness. Here are two people who are telling you to do that. So please do. It works. So thank you, everybody. And the house is open if you want to ask anything from the audience.